I'm Michael.
This is Legally Speaking. Today we're going to talk about digital assets. What's a digital asset?
Anything stored online, basically you look at tangible or intangible. Tangible, you can reach out and touch it. So your Facebook account, can't really go online and touch that. So digital assets can be social media, can be bank accounts, stock market accounts. People got real big into digital currency over the last couple of years. A lot of the platforms that you trade crypto on, those are going to be all considered digital assets. So if I die, what happens to my digital assets?
Well, that depends, I guess. There is a law in Illinois. It's called the Revised Uniform Access to Digital Assets Act.
So does that define what a digital asset is?
It does. So it says, according to the great state of Illinois, that a digital asset means an electronic record in which an individual has a right or interest. The term does not include an underlying asset or liability unless the asset or liability is itself an electronic record. So it would mean my online bank account,
but not the cash
asset,
that's in
cash.
Got it. So you've got social media accounts is the main one that people think of. Email accounts, you've got Gmail, Yahoo, any email service provider. A lot of times people pass away and main thing they're looking for is photos of loved ones. So you've got maybe grandpa that traveled the world and had photographs from every place that he stopped and visited. Well, he stored those on his Facebook page. How do we get those?
There's different ways, and the Act actually provides for that. I think the other one that I could think of while you were talking was like Venmo or PayPal.
Okay.
So electronic payment methods, like there could actually be money on those accounts that you need to get dealt with. But how we deal with those depends on, I think, what kind of planning the individual who's passed away has done. So there's different ways that you can deal with them. There's what the Act refers to as online tools. We're going to talk about that more with specific user accounts, like emails and Facebook and Instagram and things like that. But then there's also written direction that can be given by somebody during their lifetime to give their fiduciary or the person that they nominate to act the authority to deal with their digital assets.
So is that written direction typically in somebody's last will and testament?
Can be. I know that ever since this act came about and ever since this started to be an issue, that's something that we typically will include in our documents. So whether it's a will, a trust, guardians probably need that. Anybody that you're nominating to act your agent under a property power of attorney or to deal with your business, your assets in general needs specific written authority to deal with your digital assets in our state, in the state of Illinois. So if I have not done that, I haven't appropriately granted those people the authority to do it. So in your example, photos, is that what you're talking about? So if I wanted to contact that company that held the photos, let's say it's Google has the photos, I would need to present them with a death certificate that shows a person passed away in the event of a death and the appropriate written authority for me to access those documents. So that's what Google is going to want to see. In the event that the person's still alive and they've nominated me as their agent under a property power of attorney, they're going to want to see that power of attorney document that nominates that agent and gives that agent the specific written authority to deal with digital assets.
Yeah, when I was researching these issues, one thing that most providers, let's call them Twitter, Instagram, Gmail, Yahoo, whatever it is, the provider itself, one thing that came up constantly was whenever you sign up for those accounts, it asks you for all kinds of personal information. And I don't know if you were anything like I was when I created those accounts in high school or in college. At that time, I thought, well, what do they need my information for? What do they need my birthday for? Well, it's for this reason right here, because whenever you present that company with the death certificate, it's going to have your birth date on it. Well, if your account, Michael Fleshman, with Gmail has a different made up birthday because you wanted to be 21 at the time or whatever it may be, then they're probably going to reject that death certificate and say, well, we can't match and verify that this is actually the individual. So I think it's important to go back and review your online accounts and make sure your personal identification information is correct.
I agree with that. And also, one of the things that most of us are guilty of is, I don't know about you, but every time that Apple asks me to approve the revised user agreement, I usually do not sit around and read all 1,000 pages of that user agreement, but there's a lot of language in there that controls those accounts. And if somebody other than the user is trying to get access to it, those user accounts and those user agreements are what's going to control how that works, unless there's something set up specifically on the account by the user, or there's that written direction we talked about within the document that overrides that user agreement.
So option one is the platform has something that's tailored to this exact scenario. They can allow you to identify or nominate somebody to take over your account. Maybe there's only certain information they can access at your passing, or if you don't use that certain platform's in-house direction that they have, then number two is your written direction, your will, your power of attorney, whatever it may be. If you have neither of those set up, then that end user agreement that's 40,000 pages that you've never read, that's what controls. And a lot of times they make it pretty difficult for other individuals other than the account holder to access it. And privacy rights are big right now. All these companies collecting a lot of data about us. Well, they want to make sure that they're not providing that data that they've collected or the data that you've accumulated to somebody that shouldn't have it. So if that end user agreement says we don't provide any of this information to anybody, and you don't have a written direction, and you haven't taken one of their in-house options already before incapacitation or death, I mean, there's really not a good, clear answer other than, whoever is ultimately your representative would have to petition the court and ask the court to enter a specific order that says this individual has access to this account. And I mean, that's just another headache, another step that probably a loved one doesn't want to have to take in the event of dealing with a tragic situation anyways.
Yeah. Well, when we were talking before we started recording, you said Twitter doesn't allow information.
Twitter's policy is they do not share or provide information with anybody other than the account holder.
So in that circumstance, if you don't have a direction of some sort in writing to lean on in order to try to get that information from them, you're kind of stuck.
I think Twitter can come in and say, if they don't want to give up the information, they can say, well, this is our end user agreement, account holder approved it, there's no other direction anywhere else, so we're going to follow the account holder's direction at this point.
Well, and there are some specifics that we're going to get into in the next video that talk about specific types of accounts, like social media accounts, and what you can do within those individual accounts to set up legacy contact is what a lot of them refer to it as, and some practical tips on how to deal with these things. It's new, it's evolving, and there's not a lot of case law out there yet, but there's going to be.
No, and I think to keep in mind too is older people are becoming a lot more tech savvy. It's been around a lot longer. My 80-something-year-old grandma and grandpa use Facebook. So, I mean, I think that's something when you look at, well, these issues haven't come up or people don't think about them. It's because we're not really there yet, but I think it's coming very quickly. And part of what we can help too is eliminate the digital footprint that people are leaving out there. You know, you've got all these photos, these accounts, maybe you have multiple accounts. Ultimately, your legacy contact or your representative, maybe they want to get the information off of there and then delete the account so nobody else can access it. No one else can try to hack it if that happens. So I think reducing that digital footprint is part of the reason behind this too, is it gets that information offline to the extent that's possible, if that's what the deceased representative wants to do.
I think that's good information. So we'll get into some specifics in the next video. Come back and join us then, and thanks for joining us on this one.
Thanks.